on page 82, 7.5.10I is political signs. The existing language is as follows. One or more signs, the total aggregate amount of signage per property not to exceed 12 square feet. The amendment as proposed is as follows. One or more signs, the total aggregate amount of signage per property not to exceed the greater of 1, 12 square feet, or 2, the maximum aggregate amount of signage which would be allowed on the property under the regulations applicable to the district in which the property is located. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
I will yield to you for selectmen.
I think that we've done a pretty good job up to this point in determining signs with contractors and aggregate and the duration. And I think that the courts would agree that a sign is a sign. And it's going to be very difficult to decipher language of the sign, and specifically whether it's political or not. I think you need to look at this as a consistent sign language, so that if you agree to what your language is with contractor's sign, you should be consistent. And I think that legislation, law, and enforcement, it should be consistent. And I think that you need to look at making your language consistent with, Ron's shaking his head, it's my opinion, that it should be consistent. When the election's over, it comes down. You come out, you put your sign out for your candidate.
The law says that if you do regulate political signs, the political signs have, because it's free speech, they're above all other signs. So if you've limited them in town, you're gonna limit political signs. You can't limit political signs any smaller than the largest sign you have in town. So if you have an aggregate size larger than what you have here in town, or a sign larger, this would be illegal and wouldn't stand up in court.
Ron, we need to clarify this, because this has been going around.
This is what our lawyers said, this is what
Ron,
the
let me ask you
this is
the
all
question.
the information I have, this
Before
is
you
what's
answer
been
it.
said.
Let me ask you the question before you answer it. The language that you're reading was not drafted by anyone in Woodbury. The language that you're reading was drafted by Attorney Richard Roberts in order to address the exact comment that
Right.
you've made, and in order to satisfy
The
the first
problem-
selectman's comment. In other words, if you say, provided, all right, that it would be the aggregate amount of whatever sign in whatever district you are, meaning if it's commercial and it's 100 square feet in commercial, you're allowed 100 square feet of
Right.
political sign. Specifically not to discriminate between any
But
who
who's gonna
says or
figure,
usurps.
who's gonna say what and where the lines are drawn? And it makes it very hard to decide, what area can have what size or aggregate size signs
No,
and
Ron,
what
it
area
doesn't,
can't.
because if you think about this, if you are a commercial property putting up a commercial sign, staff would have to look at the regulation for the property and the sign and determine what total aggregate. They do that anyway. That is the function of the sign regulations,
This is
when there's an
This is
aggregate.
once every 2 years that this happens, and it's on.
No, I mean, there's a political sign in the middle of town that's been
And
up there for way more than 2 years.
Actually.
And
well,
you
2
have,
years.
and you have,
Who's counting?
We are.
and
So there's
and
no
the
difference
law
in the
that I
process, Ron,
read
that's all.
Ron,
didn't determine.
Can I jump in and
that way.
read?
Well, can I just
your
ask Ron what you would like this language to say?
I'd like this language to be taken out completely,
So,
out of it, and not have anything for political signs. It's only once every 2 years. Both parties have gone way over this 12 square foot aggregate, especially when you have a number of candidates like we did a few years ago, on both sides of the aisle.
I think there's a lot of
Both-
people who agree with that
Both
sentiment. Ron.
parties had too many, and you can't tell somebody, if there's 8 candidates, that you can only put signs out for 3 at a time or 4 at a time.
So do you want to propose that be changed?
I
Ron?
think that we should take this out completely.
Okay.
Political sign language, just take it out and do away with it. And political signs are exempt, and a lot of towns in Connecticut do that, and a lot of towns that have language in their regulations, just forget about it. They don't even pay attention to it.
Would it be safe to, again, you have to have some sort of definitiveness with this, and saying that, when does it end? When does a political sign stop? Do you get to leave it up 24/7, 365 days a year for 3 years? One sign?
I think I'm gonna, look, I need to direct this conversation because we have learned a lot over the last year and a half. Thanks a lot to Tom, and people like Tom who've beaten us up over it, but we've learned a lot. And I think one of the things we've learned is that there are time, place, and manner criteria that the courts look at when they decide whether something is fair and so on.
Martin,
So
that's
that,
not
so
true.
that, so that by saying you can have a political sign up only during a campaign, I think is to kind of miss the second part of the definition, which is or express a political opinion.
Right.
Stop the war in Iraq, okay? I don't think that there's any way, and I want to set this out so you can jump right in. I don't think there's any way that we can or should limit the time
Mhm.
or duration of a political message.
Mhm.
You know, I think if it's someone who's complaining about a political candidate, and after the election's over, I don't think that we're allowed to say you must take it down.
Mhm.
Is that to me?
Yeah.
I agree.
There you
Yeah,
go.
me too.
So as a result of a lot of legal study, time is something that we kind of need to leave off the table.
Mhm.
Content, clearly, I think we all agree, we don't need to beat this up again, but we need just to state it for the record, content is not what this is about at all, okay?
Mhm.
There are certain things, you know, like abuse or threats, or there are certain things which, you know them when you see them, are content that you don't allow, but they're not in these regulations, they're in another set of regulations.
Right.
Right? So I think we're there. So I think that Ron, I wanna send Ron's point round